We are on a 3-part series about friendship. Last week, we talked about just the healing properties of friendship, the benefits, and how we can create better friendships. This week, we're going to have a mashup about how we are friends to ourselves and having that great self-talk and authenticity and how we can integrate that into our friendships. Next week, we're going to talk about the harm that can come from friendships and how we can mitigate that. It's the flip slide series. And so that means we're going to talk about one side and the other side, and knowing that it's kind of a slide that it's just good for us to be aware of. So enjoy today's podcast and make it a great day.
What does the Bible really say about loving others more important than yourself? Well, in Luke 26:36-39, God gives the order of how we're supposed to love, and this order is super important. First of all, it says to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And then it says something very key. It says to love others as you love yourself. So really, the order isn't like love God, love others. The order is love God, love yourself, then love others. Super, super important. So let's talk about loving God. That can be really challenging for some of us that have experienced either religious abuse or have had abuse or religion used on us in a controlling way. And that's super important. Is first of all, in order to really love God, you have to understand who he is. And I think a lot of us think that God is like this whack-a-mole God that every time we do something wrong, it's like a pound. And that is really not what the Bible says he is at all. And so it's super important to know who he is. So loving God, and really just loving him with your whole being. It's not just like a intellectual, I love God. It's really loving him. And I think you really can't do that until you really experience his love. When you really experience he loves you, he's trying to communicate with you, he's trying to show you he loves you in even small, ridiculous ways that only you will get, and really opening your mind to being able to see that and feel it and experience it, along with, seeing, him in the Bible. So I just think that's super important. And then the second one, loving ourselves. Holy cow, that's a huge one. So a lot of people, when you think of like, how do you love yourself? What does loving others mean? So loving others, usually we think of like respecting, taking care of, being kind to. And then my question is, are you doing that to yourself? And first of all, are you doing that in your internal world? Like, are you talking to yourself in kind, respectful, loving ways? Are you prioritizing yourself? I think it's super interesting because when it comes to loving ourselves, like if we had a childhood where we had adopted any ideas that we were unlovable or not enough, it can be really self-sabotaging as an adult because we're always trying to fill that void. But as adults, we can actually really, have compassion and love for our child version of ourselves and really do a lot of healing through that work. And that's really important. But on the practical sense, loving ourselves. So let's talk about it. Being kind. I really see that with the self-talk that we talk to ourselves, and we're talking to ourselves all the stinking time. I was reading a book and it was so funny because she's like, yeah, we're actually having, we think we're having conversations with others, but we're actually having a conversation with ourselves, and they're having conversations with themselves. And sometimes we converse a little. So there's so much self-talk that we have going on in our heads, and being aware of that is very, very valuable because it really tells you what you believe, what you think, and all of that. It's not uncommon, I feel like, as women, especially in our culture, that seems to be really, the pushing a lot of things that aren't healthy. Like you need to be thinner, you need to be prettier, and all this stuff. And if we struggle with like a core belief as I'm not enough or anything like that, it can be really devastating. But the truth is, God says we are more than enough. Like we are all made more than enough, and we are fearfully and wonderfully made. That means we're made, he just absolutely loves us. So we are more than enough. And so treating ourselves and talking to ourselves with kindness is super important, and it takes time. It really takes time in order to start building that habit. But instead of being like, oh, I can't believe I was such a screw up, or I can't believe I did that, it's like, oh, I made a mistake and I can do better next time. It's a lot about reframing and just rethinking what we're thinking. For example, it's like, gosh, I just look horrible. Rather than that, it's like, gosh, I actually really like my teeth, and I'm going to focus on that. Because what you focus on expands. So if you're always focusing on where you're not enough or where you're lacking or where you're not living to your highest potential, it really sucks. But if you're encouraging and kind to yourself, that is fabulous. And then the third thing, like God says, you love others as you love yourself. You start to love others with a full cup. And that's wonderful. And I think when you're treating yourself with that kind of love, you automatically attract like healthier relationships and healthier experiences. And there's just a joy that comes with just being able to enjoy yourself and being comfortable. I think something else that's really powerful is being able to feel your own feelings. Like, I think, a lot of us will do things to avoid feeling just like sad or unworthy or, doing those things. And the most important thing you can do is to really feel your feelings. They won't kill you. They're vibrations in your body, and just allow yourself to really feel whatever feeling. Anger, anger was like a forbidden emotion in my childhood growing up. And anger is an important emotion, just to feel it. And whatever it's disappointment, whatever you're feeling, because as you feel it, it has a way of processing. If you don't feel it, it has to come out somehow, and it's going to come out in not the best ways. So just allowing yourself to feel it, that is like a huge self-care thing to be able to do, is to really, instead of like telling I shouldn't feel this, I can't think that, just allow yourself. It's okay. You can feel it. You'll be fine. So, and then with all of that, you come to relationships with a full cup from that self-love. And, big thing between like self-love and arrogance. Arrogance is actually when you think you're better than someone else. And honestly, we're all equal. We're all amazing, wonderful. We all have different talents and qualities. We're all uniquely and wonderful. And we're equal. So it's not arrogant to love yourself in just a healthy, loving way. And it helps you add more to your life, helps you add more to the world. You have more love to give. You have more love for the relationships you're in. And that's why God gives the order. Like, love God fully, experience His love fully, and then love yourself, and then love others. And that is what leads to just such a happy, healthier life, more fulfilling, and just delighting in the small things. Are you feeling stuck in with love, wealth, or peace? Well, you're not alone. Often it's a subconscious belief holding you back. That's why I combined life coaching and hypnotherapy together, so you can break through what's been keeping you stuck. Life coaching helps you shift your mindset, while hypnotherapy works deep within to reprogram limiting beliefs and memories. It's fast, it's effective, typically one session of each, and I have a few openings left. Are you ready for a change? Visit livebrighter.info and book your free consultation and see if this approach is right for you. See you then. Have you ever been told life is all about serving others? Well, some people need to hear that regularly. And some people, like me or you, if you're listening to this podcast, are more kind girls. And we actually don't need to hear that regularly, because what happens is serving is easy. And we end up serving and serving at the expense of ourselves all the time, and over caring and over giving and getting exhausted and tolerating bad behavior and all those things which can be destructive of ourselves. We can become people pleasers with this message and become eventually what's called a high functioning codependent. So definitely not the message that us kind girls need to hear. Life is about serving others. While service is important, a balance is way more important, and understanding the order of things is way more important. So where do we even get this message? I think this is an interesting thing to think about and talk about. So we could get it from our families. I feel like, I even did it to myself, my kids. It's like, hey, are you thinking of your brother and sister? Which actually is super important, because I had one particular child that definitely wasn't naturally wanting to think of anybody. And so that was super important in training. The challenge is we're dealing with different personalities. My oldest daughter was a naturally serving, caring person, and she didn't need to hear that message all the time, because her challenge was not serving and caring for others. It was caring for herself and knowing what she needed. So it could be from our family. It could be society in general. I feel like as females, this is kind of pressed on us a little bit, that, life is about serving others. If you come from a Christian religion or a religious background, I feel like that's kind of a popular thing that we hear, is it's all about serving others and being in community, which has its place and is super valuable. But again, to the kind girl, that is not the message we need to hear all the time. So really, though, I really believe that this is important to love ourselves first, not in a selfish way, where we're chronically, being selfish. But that's not the message that kind girls need to hear. We need to love others as we love ourselves. And so what we need to do is start by loving ourselves. And that is super important. And that's also like, I just think that there's so much wisdom in ancient books, but especially like I'm biased. I love the Bible. And Jesus said it very clearly. What's the greatest commandment? And it's like, well, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And they're like, well, what's the second greatest one? It's love your neighbor as you love yourself. Super important to love yourself first before you can love someone else more fully. And really, we're the ones that know ourselves the best, or we should. I took it was a while where I had to kind of relearn myself. And it's like, what do I want? What do I like? What is important to me? What makes me angry? What are my core values? I had to kind of rediscover that because I'd kind of lost that along the way as I spent all my time serving others. But really, that's like the idea of put on your own oxygen mask first. If you were to get an airplane, there was a problem, put on your own oxygen mask first before you can assist others with their oxygen mask. So it's really filling our tank and being responsible for ourselves before we start realizing that we have the energy and time and we're serving others in a way that's actually out of true love. So what are some 4 things we can help with ourselves as far as knowing how to love ourselves and how to do this in a way that is healthy for ourselves? Well, first of all, I would say the Unravel notebook that is available on Amazon is super helpful, and that's something that I designed that helped me through the whole unraveling my mind after being in a destructive relationship. But really, it don't have to be in a destructive relationship. It's kind of like getting rid of that kind girl bullseye. And even in part of it, it's like, well, what's important to you? What are thoughts? What are, situations? What are values? What are things you like and don't like? It's just a way to reconnect and unravel ourselves so that we can live a life by design and flourish and thrive. So that's really helpful. But within that, I think the most important thing is taking ownership. Like owning, like kind girls, my goodness, we get take advantage of quite a bit. And a lot of times we allow it. So really owning where we're at, owning our situation, owning our past, present, and future, and that we really are the sum of our choices. And that we do actually can own our choices, own where we're at, and then we have the freedom to change 1% at a time and change our thinking. But I think owning my side of the situation rather than blaming my husband on his part was super, super important for my healing journey and knowing how to, self-love and serve others. So the Unravel notebook and owning it, so that would be the second thing. Just choosing to reiterate true beliefs. Like once you've eradicated or realize, hey, that belief is like faulty and I don't want it, the more you can reiterate the true belief, the better. So one that I did was I'm enough. And so I did that, like I had it on my phone, I had it on my mirror, and you can still go to my website and get the affirmations, and that's one of them, the free affirmations, and that's I am enough. And so just reiterating that over and over and over, because I had definitely adopted an idea or a belief that I was not enough. And that was what allowed me to chronically overserve and not keep that in balance. So choosing to reiterate the belief, like I am worthy, I am safe, or whatever it is that's getting in the way from you loving yourself in a healthy way. So again, self-love is not selfish. And self-love starts with like considering your thoughts, feelings, and who you are as valuable and important. And the next thing is making time to take care of yourself physically, emotionally, and spiritually. The next one is like talking to ourselves in a way that is loving, like a friend would do. And that's the pieces of self-love. Our emotional cups can get full without us really even being aware of it. But when our emotional cups get full, we can react rather than respond. We can be fatigued. We can feel burdened. We have struggle with sleep. We can have physical symptoms. And that's why I have the free Barf Notebook page for you. And it's a simple process done regularly where you're barfing out your thoughts, sorting them out, and planning them out. And it's a wealth of healing in that. So go ahead and check the link and have access to that free Barf Notebook process. Live brighter every day. Have you ever said to yourself, well, that was stupid, or I'm so fat, or I suck at this, or I should be doing more? Well, if so, you're not alone. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about our self-talk as in self-love. This week, we're talking about how we can love ourselves by our self-talk. And that's a biggie. The level of our success is determined by our self-talk and how we speak to ourselves. So that's super important. Another thing is don't believe every thought we have. I mean, thoughts are thoughts and they can be very different and diverse. And it's more about what thoughts we want to choose and train ourselves to believe. So first of all, the most important thing is just to start by understanding our brains and where do these thoughts come from? Well, they can come from a lot of things. They can come from our past, our present, our stories, our beliefs, our identity. But it's important to understand that we have lots of parts of our brains all working together, but there's two main parts that it's important to know, the lawyer and the lifeguard. And so the lifeguard parts of us wants to keep us safe, and it wants to keep us in the little kiddie pool that has no water in it with a life jacket on, and still wants to keep us safe. So the lifeguard part of our brain is always telling us things like, oh, you can't do that. Oh, that's not a good idea. Oh, you could get hurt. Anything to keep us safe. But you just have to understand that's just a part of our brain, and that's doing its job. It's trying to keep us safe, and we don't have to believe what it's telling us. Then we have the lawyer part of our brain, which is very interesting because whatever we tell the lawyer, he just goes to work. He goes to work and he looks for evidence in our past, he looks for evidence in our present. So for example, if I tell myself I'm not smart, he's like, yeah, I see that. Let's look at this example and look at this example and look at that example. And that's the lawyer's job. But I could also tell the lawyer either I am smart, and he's like, oh yeah, I remember how you did really well in this and you did really well in this, and he'll find evidence for that. So it's very interesting to know that we have a lawyer and a lifeguard part of our brain. We also have a mean girl. So the mean girl is just a judgmental bitch, and she just wants to criticize and compare and tell you all sorts of crap. So it's just important to understand that we have different parts of our brain, and if we just realize that, hey, that thought is actually coming from my lifeguard, and he's just trying to keep me safe, or she's just trying to keep me safe, and I appreciate you, but I'm going to choose not to listen to you. And lawyer, I'm going to tell you good thoughts and good choices, and then you can work on finding supportive evidence to just affirm what I want to tell you. And then mean girl, you just got to go away. So it's just important to know, because basically our self-confidence comes from how we talk about ourselves or talk to ourselves. Are we going to be loving? Are we going to be curious about our thoughts? Are we going to be gracious to ourselves? Or are we going to be a perfectionist and mean and have that mean girl come up, or the lifeguard just tell us how we can't do anything? And that is really what leads to self-confidence, as far as like really being nice and talking to ourselves graciously and kindly, because that affects how we feel about ourselves. So our thoughts affect our feelings, and then our feelings affect our actions. So if we're feeling like more loving, then we're going to act in a more loving way towards others. So it's really neat how it all works out. We're also going to take care of ourselves and our whole selves and prioritize ourselves, which is a super important part of loving ourselves too. So how do we grow from all this? What are some action steps? If you find that your self-talk is negative, is like devaluing yourself, if you're comparing yourself a lot to others, I will tell you, you will never be the winner, or you will elevate yourself to a higher degree and be arrogant. So comparing ourselves doesn't do jack shit for us or anybody else. So I just say, as much as you can, just throw that sucker out the window. I also think judgment of others is the same thing. Just, like I've trained myself to, anytime I meet someone, I focus on something I like about them, or something that, because our brains naturally just want to be critical. And that's that just self-preservation part. The lifeguard is like, oh, you're just that preserving part. And I'm like, no, actually, I'm going to choose differently. And if I'm going to make a judgment, it's going to be a good judgment. And I really like that. So let's take some action. What can we do? Because honestly, this is a growth thing for all of us. It's a lifelong thing because we're human, and there's a lot we can do by training our brains, but it takes intention and action. So these are some thoughts of some things you can do. So you can download your encouraging friend. And so what I mean by that is, like I said, you've got your lawyer, you've got your lifeguard in your brain, you've got your mean girl. I just say download the encouraging friend. And sometimes I've given her a name or a person I know that's always encouraging. And actually I've made that person Jesus, because I see him as encouraging. And so don't do that if you have an idea that he's not that way. And I see him as loving, encouraging. And so I'm constantly like, okay, well, what is Jesus saying? Or what is he thinking? or just being curious with my thoughts rather than that mean girl judgmental and, spewing out negative self-talk to myself. So downloading that encouraging friend and then just speaking kindly and encouraging to yourself. I know I had this idea that if I were to talk encouraging to myself, that's a little arrogant, but I am like, that's so not true. I encourage myself all day long. And it's stuff like, wow, gold star, Tara, you really didn't want to make those calls that you needed to do for your real estate business, and you did it anyways. Or good job, Tara, you knew you had to follow up with a life coach client and you did it. So, or for me, just speaking truthfully when I just want to speak, there's times when I know I need to say something that's very, a little bit harsher and I need to say it. And just being able to say, gold star, Tara, you wanted to just let that slide by. It was a meeting and you didn't want to give your opinion, but you knew it was important and you did it. So just things like that, constantly encouraging ourselves. And I think that's a great habit for us to get in. I think it really comes from this idea, who do you think we should be the nicest to in our lives? Or who are you the nicest to? And I think that's a very interesting thought, because if you look at a lot of people or a lot of families, it's not uncommon that they're actually nicer to strangers than they are to their own family, which is very strange. But then it's also very common that we're nicer to strangers and nicer to our family than we are to ourselves. And we're actually our closest person to us, and we should be the kindest there. That's where love should be starting. Love from God, loving ourselves, and then giving that love to others. And so it really makes sense that that's where it should start. So first of all, download the encouraging friend. You can just make that choice. Second, make the choice to boot out the mean girl. I just think getting rid of that comparison, that judging girl, that just mean girl, just get rid of her. And just say, you don't belong here anymore. This is not your home. And so it's really great to figure out the tools that you think would work best for you and decide how you want to pursue loving yourself more. Because the more you love yourself, the more you can love others and just live a brighter life and let your light shine. And that's what you're made for, is to let your light shine, because all of us have beautiful lights and we all have something to add to the world. I like the example. I'm going to leave you with this example of Tony Robbins. I love Tony Robbins. He was just a poor kid at 17, living in his car, just a very challenging childhood. And now we can, for the ones that know Tony Robbins from his impact, he's one of the most impactful self-help people that we know. And, if you listen to his story, that started by changing his thoughts, his self-talk, one thought at a time. So let your light shine. I believe in you. Have a great day.
Stay tuned for our next episode.